Hey everyone, it's POW Ponder Weather. In this update, we're going to start off taking a look at the longer range because it definitely turns colder again in the second half of February. But first, we're going to be tracking two storm systems, and one of them brings southern snow. So let's take a look at the overall Northern American view temperatures this morning. You can see where all the cold air is, well up there in the Arctic. It's 20, 30, if not 40 degrees below zero. It's just kind of waiting on a trigger to funnel that colder air southbound through southern portions of Canada into the United States. And I think that happens by the time we get into the second half of February. So let's take a look at the overall jet stream. By the time we do get in that second half of February, you can see by the time we get into that 17th, 18th time frame, look how far south the jet stream goes, all the way down there in Mexico. That's going to allow that colder air to plunge all the way down into the deep south. And with that, that's going to be able to lower the snow line as well, bring the storm track a little bit further south as well. And all culprit because the teleconnections do turn negative. You can see where they are right now. They're positive on the EPO. But as we trend towards the second half, I know these dates at the bottom of the screen is a little bit hard to see, but right here is the 15th of the month. And right there, that's when it turns negative. And look where it stays negative all the way through the remaining parts of February. So that's an indication. Once it turns, it's going to be a step down process and continue to get a little bit colder the deeper we get into the second half of February. It's all culprit of the temperature anomalies. By the time we get into your 20th and 25th of the month, there's that colder air plunging all the way down into the deep south, bringing those well below average temperature anomalies well out west all the way through the central US. Again, that's going to be able to bring that snow line to further south as well and bring that storm track a little bit further south as well. And it doesn't end there because the teleconnections continue to remain negative through the end of the month of February. And I think they actually continue through the portions of even into March timeframe. So if we take a look at some of the even longer range out, going into that first week and the second week of March, you can see predominantly much of the lower 48 is well below average temperature. So I do feel we've got plenty of winter still on the table left to come in the weeks ahead. So let's break this thing down for you. If you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns on North America, hit the subscribe button and you're in. You get all my daily content on this channel. It's also important to hit the like button as well. It definitely helps out more than you know. So let's take a look at the overall snow track, where some of this snow has fallen over the last 24, 48 hours. We've been tracking this snow track. We talked about it forming basically in eastern portions of New Mexico, traveling across portions of the Texas Panhandle, far northwest portions of Oklahoma. It snowed last night and northwest of Oklahoma and around the Oklahoma City area, 1 to 2.5 inches, big fluffy wet, very wet snowflakes. They melted on contact, but we talked about a frontogenesis type setup, and this was going to be a thin, narrow banding, and it's still going to be snowing up here in northwestern portions of Missouri. It was snowing this morning up there in Kansas City, then swinging all the way through Illinois and going in through portions of southern Wisconsin. But what's also interesting, there's going to be a back half kicker system coming in on the backside that's also going to be having a reinforcing shot of colder air, but it's also going to have its own vorticity with it as well. And this is the one that gets more interesting for places into the deep south, because as this pulls in, it's going to have its own cold core along with it. Even though technically there's no Arctic air in place this week, this is going to be cold enough where it's going to be able to lower the elevations on the snow line and drop some of those wet, fluffy snowflakes in places that typically don't see snow. So let's really break this thing down for you. But first, the winds are going to be cranking for the next 48 hours. You can see on the latest high resolution guidance overall with this wind trajectory. This is why they've got, high wind warnings, wind watches all across portions of the Ohio Valley, through Kentucky, through Tennessee, all the way up into the mid-Atlantic. through portions of New England as well. Those winds cranking, gusting at times, if not 50, 60, could be 65 miles an hour, but also in the middle of the country where that back half system as well, with that other vorticity that's going to be swinging across, those could be elevating the winds as well. Not as high, is still 30 to 40 miles an hour, closer to say 50 up here in portions of Nebraska going into Kansas area. But let's take a look at the temperatures as we go into Friday. Like I mentioned, the back half of this system, it's got a reinforcing shot of colder air. So it's going to be a chilly day with those brisk north winds in a lot of the areas into Kansas, into Oklahoma, back into Texas, into North Texas. Those wind chills are going to be struggling probably to get above freezing pretty much almost all day long in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, with highs topping out in the lower 40s. But look where the temperatures are a little bit lower. That's where that vorticity is. And like I mentioned, that's where it's going to bring its own cold core aloft and drop the temperatures another 5 to 7 degrees where that travels across. And that's going to allow it to just snow underneath that. So again, this is going to be a kind of a wet, fluffy, huge snowflake type of event. But yes, heading into tomorrow afternoon, don't be surprised you start seeing more snowflakes flying out of the sky up there in eastern Oklahoma and northwestern portions of Arkansas. And it doesn't end there, because I think this actually even extends and drops even further south, if you can believe that. Look at the setup as we go into, deeper into the day on Saturday morning, heading into Saturday afternoon. Look how far south that drops. It goes all the way down into Louisiana, down into Mississippi, through Arkansas, heading up into portions of Alabama there, into Tennessee. And again, that's going to bring that snow even further south. So definitely places that you typically just don't see snow are probably going to be seeing the snowflakes flying as that system comes through Arkansas. I wouldn't rule out even northern portions of Louisiana getting to see some snowflakes out of this deal, but especially into portions of northern central and northern Mississippi start seeing the snow flying as we go into Saturday afternoon time frame. And it just continues for these areas across the southeast as that low pressure center will continue to traverse across eastbound. That's going to bring the snow across with it as well. So those places into central and northern Alabama, central and northern Georgia, you're going to start getting to see the snow action. And it's not western Tennessee this time. It's places in central and eastern Tennessee that see the snow. So this is a shift. This is a big shift in the overall pattern that we've seen as of late. These areas that are getting, rain in the middle part of the country, that a lot of the areas that got left out are starting to see the rain. So we're starting to see the shift in the overall setup and starting to see that jet stream lower as well. That brings the snow line and has opportunities for these places on the southern branch to start seeing some of the snowflakes flying in their neck of the woods. And that's exactly what we're seeing by the time we get into the 12th of the month with this system moving across a good part of the southeast. It's bringing some good snows along with it. And so as we continue and look at some of the temperatures going into Sunday morning, like I mentioned, that's not Arctic air, but where that low travels, it's going to be a fluffy, wet, big, huge snowflake. So this will be fun to see. These places don't really see snow that often, but they are going to probably be seeing some snowflakes flying, over the weekend, with this system. It's going to be one of those systems, it's going to see it falling out of the sky. It's not going to be able to stick because the grounds are going to be too warm and the temperatures are technically warmer as well. It's not even going to be freezing in a lot of these places, but it should be cold enough at least to snow where that low pressure travels overhead. And so if you're underneath it, yeah, you're going to be seeing some snowflakes flying out of the sky. There's no question about it. So, and I think even into Sunday afternoon, I think it really starts to intensify even greater, heading up into portions, say western portions of North Carolina, getting into Virginia. That starts sneaking into portions of West Virginia as well, as that system will really start to amplify. I think you'll start to see rain kind of form along the coast with this low pressure center forming along the coast. So anywhere, if you live along the coastal regions, is probably more likely not going to get in the snow action, but more of the interior regions are definitely going to be seeing some snow flying out of this deal. So yeah, the latest NAM 3K only goes out 60 hours, and that brings the snow line, across portions of Oklahoma as well as into Arkansas. Now, here's the NAM 12K. So just because it doesn't really have much snow here into Louisiana, into portions of Mississippi, into northern portions of Georgia, doesn't mean it's not going to happen, right? So I am expecting at least the snow continuing to traverse across as this system comes out. This is the first system that moves through that over, now in the next 24 to 48 hours. Here's the back half, the kicker system that comes through portions of eastern Oklahoma through Arkansas. That sneaks into portions of northern Louisiana. I can't even roll out snow flex for them, but especially areas for central and northern Mississippi, central and northern Alabama, and then especially into central and northern Georgia, central and eastern portions of Tennessee, and then once you start getting into the Carolinas as well. So let's take a look at the overall European ensemble guidance. This is an indication there's that low pressure center forming off the into the Carolinas here. Look how rapidly it deepens, and look how far south it goes. If we were colder, I mean, if we were just another 5 to 10 degrees colder, we would be looking at a pretty significant snowstorm out of this deal. So, but overall, right, the way it looks right now, those temperatures are going to be 35, 37 degrees. So it's going to be just a kind of a wet snow with this system, but we still got several days ahead to track this thing. But yeah, don't be surprised if this thing overperforms, because if we look at the overall European ensembles, now this is the ensembles, I wouldn't take the amounts, the snow amounts verbatim, but I would look at the track, and this is the track that we're talking about. There's that first snow system that's happening right now in the next 24 to 48 hours. But here's the kicker system on the southern branch side of it that swings through portions of eastern Oklahoma, swings through, Arkansas, far northeast Texas, into northern portions of Louisiana, getting into northern portions of Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia, then higher amounts as you go into Tennessee, into western portions of North Carolina, getting into Virginia as well. So this is the area I think the storm track is going to be unfolding, and some of these areas within this bullseye could definitely kind of overperform if you're like literally right in the heart of where that low pressure center travels over your house. You could really start to see some bigger totals out of that if that storm track goes basically directly over your house. So but after that, it's all about the rain coming back into central parts of the U.S. We talked about this pattern kind of changing. So again, Texas got hit hard, just yesterday, a couple days ago, and then Oklahoma as well. I think even more amplified back into Oklahoma. So these are areas that have kind of been missing out on the deal with a lot of the rain over the last couple of months. So this is a significant change of these storm systems really kind of setting up into the central part of the U.S., eating away a lot of these drought totals in parts of the central U.S., but definitely taking a look of, heavy rain coming back in the picture for Monday and your Valentine's Day for these areas in the middle part of the country. But as we move through into your Wednesday timeframe, that system will be racing across, that swings across the Ohio Valley. We talked about the teleconnections. This is the 15th. So this is the transition period, right? This is your transition time. We're going to be starting to see a little bit more colder air coming in from Canada and pushing into the United States, right? And so that's going to amplify these systems and bring a lot of these elevated snows back in the picture as well. So I think the snow is going to be flying again in places like into Denver. And I think that just continues to push back into New Mexico and eventually back into portions of Texas and Oklahoma as we get deeper in the middle of next week, because it's all about the cold air, right? As the teleconnections continue to plunge southbound, It starts west because that's where the cold air is now, but that will be amplified across the western portions. The eastern half will be above average, but this will be slowly eaten away as time goes on, especially as we get deeper into the second half of February. And eventually all these well above average temperature anomalies will be gone, and the cold air will be kind of really engulfed over the lower 48 as we get in basically that last half or that last week of February. But as the cold air continues to plunge and that jet stream continues to plunge, that brings the snow line further south, right? So you're bringing it back into the Texas panhandle. You're probably going to be including more of Oklahoma. And since there's a little bit more colder air around, we're probably going to be amping up the snow totals as well in these regions by the time we get into next Thursday. So these areas that haven't seen rain in a while, and these areas that really haven't seen snow in a while, are going to be seeing the snow flying and their neck of the woods by the time we get into the middle of next week. But you know, here's the precipitation front. You can see it. You can see the overall pattern change on here. So the west starts to dry up again, right? So dry pretty much, you know, below average, you know, out west. But these systems come back into play. So you've got areas, eastern portions of Colorado, yeah, central, you know, Kansas, Oklahoma, a good part of Texas, above average precipitation, right? So this is kind of rare. We have not seen this in a while. So that you're seeing over and over again these setups across the central parts of the U.S. Instead of forming up here, they're forming well back. So that's a significant change, but it's also amplified further south as well. And this storm track, as these continue to move up, so we got a good soaking across a good part of the southeast and up through the Carolinas. So guys, I appreciate you guys following. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me in the next update while I protect you for and after the storm.